Okay, hello. Good night for everyone. Thank you for joining our DevOps Indonesia online meetup at 47 or 48. The DevSecOps approach, everything you need to know about DevSecOps. Okay, we start from, for as today's speakers will be Paul Hidalgo, the head of Cloud for Southeast Asia for Trend Micro. He will brought the topic about the DevSecOps approach. Okay, so before we go to our first session, let me tell you about the rundown first. From 7 to 7:10, will be an opening announcement and introduction. From the 7:11, to 7:50, presentation by Paul Hidalgo. 7:51 to 8, there will be question and answer session. Then 8 to 50, there will be a quiz, photo session, feedback, and closing. So I suggest you all to not leave the session because there will be a quiz at the last of our session. So there will be some rules for our sharing session. This event is live streamed, recorded. And the second, if you have any difficulties, please raise your hands. And the third one, when the time is given on Q&A session, please use the chat box to ask the questions. Okay, so let me brief you about small information about DevOps Indonesia. It's established since October 2017. Our meetup member is already more than 3,300. At Telegram is more than 4,500. Telegram group at ID DevOps. You can also join it if you haven't. Our website is devopsindonesia.com. That will be redirect to meetup.com. So there will be a short infographic about our activity. From June, there is API security webinar. And at July, we are having our sharing session by Mr. Madi. At August, we are having with AWS and PayFast, Mr. Petra, and Sebastianus Kurniawan, and Mr. Muhammad Yahya. Then at September, we are having with Shopee and DevOps Indonesia, of course, with Khairul Zebua and Denny Priyatna, with Made Mulya, having a talk show, not sharing session. And as today, we are having with Trend Micro, with Paul Hidalgo. So at the November, maybe we will have the meetup also again with AWS. So in this information, I will give to Miss Mia to explain. Please,
Oke.
Miss Mia.
Iya, selamat malam teman-teman semua. Saya akan menyampaikan dalam bahasa ya. Terima kasih untuk teman-teman semua yang sudah hadir malam hari ini di Meetup DevOps Indonesia. Tadi juga udah ada perkenalan sekilas ya dari Mas Wisnu dan juga materinya apa hari ini. Dan tadi juga kalau mungkin teman-teman agak ke-skip bahwa kita hari ini ada games, ada quiz. Jadi pastiin teman-teman ikutin sesinya. Kemudian jangan dulu leave sampai benar-benar acaranya udah selesai karena banyak banget hadiah menarik yang nanti akan dibagikan untuk teman-teman semua yang beruntung. Nah, tapi sebelum kita masuk ke materinya, saya akan menyampaikan informasi yang seperti teman-teman sudah lihat ya di layar Zoom teman-teman semua, bahwa DevOps Indonesia sudah dari bulan Agustus kemarin sampai dengan bulan ini kami berkolaborasi dengan Nginx. Jadi kami berkolaborasi bersama-sama, kami mencari Nginx super users di Indonesia. Nah, jadi untuk teman-teman silakan yang kemarin mungkin udah ada beberapa ya yang ikut webinarnya, kemudian juga mungkin ada juga yang udah tersertifikasi. Stay in touch sama DevOps Indonesia karena ada beberapa informasi yang akan kami sampaikan karena eventnya masih akan berlanjut. Boleh next, Mas Wisnu? Ya, jadi kami infokan, boleh di next, Mas Wisnu, slide-nya. Ya, jadi kami infokan bahwa kami kemarin itu infokan bahwa masa untuk sertifikasinya, jadi disebutnya adalah ASEAN Nginx Super User. Jadi nggak cuma di Indonesia, ada di beberapa negara lain seperti di Filipina, di Thailand, di Malaysia, kemudian di Singapura, dan masih banyak lagi. Dan untuk bulan Oktober ini, sorry Mas Wisnu, nah masih slide yang ini ya. Dan di bulan Oktober ini sudah diumumkan ya, kemarin ada webinar dari Nginx bahwa untuk top 3 Nginx ASEAN Super User, sayang sekali ya belum ada yang dari Indonesia, tapi nggak apa-apa teman-teman, jangan bersedih, jangan berkecil hati. Jadi so far memang untuk di bulan Oktober ini, itu yang pertama, yang menempati posisi pertama adalah dari Malaysia, kemudian yang kedua dari Filipina, yang ketiga dari Thailand. Dan untuk berikutnya, nanti selain ada top 3 di ASEAN, jadi nggak cuma di bulan ini, nanti di bulan November kita juga akan infokan lagi ya. Jadi bagi teman-teman yang belum sempat tersertifikasi, silahkan ambil sertifikasi sebagai Nginx Super User. Gimana caranya? Bisa cek di sosial media DevOps Indonesia. Boleh next, Mas Wisnu? Dan apa aja sih sebenarnya keuntungan buat teman-teman yang tersertifikasi menjadi Nginx Super User? Nah, ini adalah sertifikat dan juga swag yang dari Nginx. Yang pertama pasti teman-teman kalau udah tersertifikasi akan mendapatkan sertifikat, itu udah pasti. Kemudian akan dapat Nginx swag pack, itu langsung dari Nginx, dikirim dari Amerika. Jadi nanti teman-teman bisa redeem untuk pembelian swag pack yang ada di layar Zoom teman-teman. Kemudian selain itu, boleh next Mas Wisnu. Dan juga tadi kan ada Nginx Super User license ya 1 tahun, itu untuk teman-teman yang top 3. Nah, sampai saat ini belum ada yang dari Indonesia, jadi we encourage teman-teman, kita harus semangat ya, harus mungkin masih banyak harapan bahwa teman-teman dari Indonesia mungkin juga ada yang bisa sampai di top 3 ASEAN. Nah, selain ada top 3 ASEAN, kita juga punya top 10 di Indonesia. DevOps Indonesia berkolaborasi dengan Nginx, jadi persembahan dari DevOps Indonesia untuk teman-teman yang tersertifikasi sampai dengan akhir bulan Oktober ini, nanti akan kita umumkan top 10-nya. Yang pertama akan mendapatkan headphone dari Audio Technica, kemudian akan ada mechanical keyboard, kemudian ada speaker Bluetooth. Boleh next, Mas Wisnu? Dan berikutnya adalah untuk posisi keempat sampai dengan 10 juga ada merchandise dan GrabFood voucher dari DevOps Indonesia. Seperti itu. Oke, jadi untuk teman-teman semua yang mungkin tertarik untuk menjadi salah satu ASEAN Nginx Super Users, akan saya share linknya di mana untuk teman-teman bisa ambil sertifikasinya di kolom chat box, akan saya share setelah ini. Dan ya, kami tunggu partisipasi teman-teman semua yang mungkin mau mencoba, dan semoga berhasil dan menjadi salah satu Nginx Super User. Good luck teman-teman semua. Saya kembalikan ke Mas Wisnu ya, next-nya.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Mia, for the information about Nginx. So, okay, DevOps Indonesia, we encourage you to join us on this event. So stay connected with us at Telegram group, LinkedIn. There are also Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube channel, and also the Meetup DevOps Indonesia. You can also scan here if you want to redirect to DevOps Indonesia. So without further ado, let me welcome you the session, Mr. Paul Hidalgo, as he brought his topic. Mr. Paul Hidalgo.
Hey, thank you guys. Yeah, it's good to be here. Nice. Good evening, and it's nice to have you listen to my presentation. I'm going to be presenting about DevSecOps, and people are saying, what is it about, and um, what do we need to know? But for us, it's more of how do we actually apply it in a very simple manner. Sometimes people think DevSecOps is a very complex thing, and it has to be very hard, and you have to be very good at it to deploy it. So today we're just going to be talking about some basic things on how you can actually implement it in your environment. So what is how do we do things before? So when you look at security and compliance and checking, we have this way of doing things where you have to do development. You're gonna put some checks. You're gonna deploy it, and then you're gonna monitor or audit. Then you're gonna fix it. So this has been like the old adage of doing things. This is how we've been doing for past maybe 30 years before the advent of DevOps. Can be applied to the waterfall approach and the heavy releases, right? But what we're seeing now is, we're trying to make it easier, and we try to improve all of these. People ask us what's important with DevSecOps, and why should people do it, and why should people use it. From my opinion, right, it helps you find issues faster, right? Way faster to find issues. Number two, it helps you learn how to code properly. And if you ask my opinion, right, the last one is how do you reduce the surface area in production. So for today, I have a sample application to show you guys. So it's running in React Flask. It's running on using Kubernetes, using CloudFormation, and everything is deployed in GitHub. And I will show you what are the certain small things that you can do to run your environment. Right. So let's start with coding. So when you're a developer, how do we scan code before, right? What is the reason why people do scans? The way it works is the developer writes code, puts it in GitHub, or there's an auditor who puts it in like an audit branch, and then they will submit it for scanning. So and they send it to a static analysis tool, or somebody is doing some static analysis. This is good when you're on a waterfall approach, where you have limited release, and you're on strict release cycle. But how can you make this one faster? How can we improve this experience? For example, right, as soon as you're developing, as you're running the code, how can you run the environment? How do you do a scan right away? Right. So how do you actually run some kinds of scans while you're saving and writing code? So I'm going to show you a demo. So here's my environment. Here's my VS Code here. I have a very basic application here, if you ask my opinion. It contains, my application and my Python script and my JavaScript. So at the left, right, you're seeing Sneak. So it does scan the code that I'm writing as I'm writing it. So basically, it's analyzing it in my GUI, in my UI, in my code environment. And when you scroll down, right, it'll tell you that, hey, you're having unsanitized input. So it will tell you that, look, this code, maybe you want to fix it, right? And you can add some, it will give you reasons what to do it as you're writing the code, and it will ask you to fix it in that way. You can also choose to ignore or ignore in this file. Maybe it's real, you really need this you really need this system, right? It also has, running the application in debug mode, because another thing that you don't want to happen is, you're running your application debug mode. A lot of things are turned on, the traces are there, and if you're an adversary, you're going to look for applications that's running on debug mode so that you can probably learn a lot of things like environment variables and secrets and so on and so forth. So you don't even have to commit. While you're just writing the code, you're getting the code analyzed by analyze in real time. If you ask my opinion, it's very, very good. It's very, very powerful. And again, you have the examples here. You know that, hey, you need to fix it like this, right? So something that's very cool. You don't have to commit. You don't have to wait for, you do not have to wait for your developer, or you don't have to wait for anyone to let you know that there's something wrong. Even for your JavaScript code, right? It will tell you that, hey, there's a your arrays and has to have something set, right? And the good thing is it's giving you examples, right? So maybe it's just something around code hygiene, right? It's not really a problem, right? But that's why it's called medium. But the high, obviously, you want to be able to fix it as soon as possible, and you can fix it right here before you even send it for testing. So that's step number one. How do you put security controls on your development environment? Gives you a lot less issues when you are actually deploying the application. So that's number one. Number two, what about the libraries? So when you look at the libraries, when you use npm or when you use Python, right? You have to download the libraries, and sometimes the libraries have vulnerabilities inside. And when you look at vulnerabilities, you can be exploited by the adversary or the hackers, and it might cause some issue when they do a test, right? So there are some tools that you can use to make sure that on the deployment side, while you're building the project, you can run your code with this kind of vulnerability scanning. So it will make your life easier. It will do a lot of it will help you out in making sure that you have very good hygiene. If you ask my opinion, we've deployed I wrote applications before, and I'm so concerned about technical debt. The least I can do is to make sure that we deploy properly. Right. Next, what about infrastructure? So I love Terraform. I love using CloudFormation. I love using IAC. When you look at infrastructure as code, it's very good. It makes you build things very fast. It makes you it makes it easier for you to deploy UAT environment production with one configuration and just changing the setups. Sometimes the problem is you have to wait for the stuff to get deployed to get feedback, and it will take some time. And when you look at infrastructure, you don't want to have a lot of fixes in production, because that's not how you fix things, right? You fix things before, and you try to avoid fixing things while you're in the production environment. So what's the best, right? What if you can do it faster? What if you can while you're writing your templates, you can run it against a specific policy. And this is something that I really like, because you're avoiding issues as early as you can. So let's do another demo. So here, I have my CloudFormation template. It's not really complex. It's basically AWS subnet. I just took the AWS template and I added a security group inside. So as I'm writing this, I want to know if there are going to be issues security-wise. how I while I write this while I write the template. So I prepared a shell script, right? I prepared a small shell script that I'm gonna run, cfn.sh. So I'm gonna run a simple shell script, and what it does is it's going to scan this file that I'm just writing on, and it will tell me that there's a scan failure found. Please fix your template. So this is a very simple way of knowing it. Obviously, you can, it puts it in the result is in the JSON file. You can run you can run a JQ around it, and you can see, can do a cat JQ. Yeah, let's see. Do this. Oops. Yeah, so you can find it like that, and you can organize the data, and you can see it from what are the issues, right? But sometimes, you want to see it on a in a UI. So I'm going to show you the UI. So you can see it in the UI, and what are the issues? If this is the same template that I just scanned, it will just tell you that these are the exact issues that you are having. And for a developer or for an infra person writing this stuff, it actually also gives you a lot of visibility. Now, why am I always showing it in the console, right? Why am I always showing the console and my Visual Studio Code when doing all of these? All of the commands that I'm running is running via API. That means you can put it in your CI/CD pipeline, right? So this is when it comes to infrastructure. The next one is containers. Right? Next one is containers. When you're looking at production vulnerabilities, how do people build containers before? You build the image, you deploy it to production, and then as soon as the container's in production, you run a VA scan on it. It's very, very, it's okay, but this is the old school of doing things, right? What you want to do is you want to be able to build out, and you want to be able to build and know things as fast as you can, and and you can resolve it. So can it be verified? While you're writing the Docker file, can you verify the Docker image? The question there is you can, right? And there are tools that allows you to look at it, right? So one thing that you can use is container scanning tools. Even if you deploy, as simple as using Docker Hub, right? Docker Hub has its own scanning as well. So if you're using Docker Hub, you can actually find out what are the vulnerabilities. So this container that I'm showing right now, it has a lot of critical vulnerabilities, obviously because it's quite old, right? So it will show you a lot of vulnerabilities inside that you can fix. And sometimes you can actually just check and fix it and then redeploy the container as well. You can rebuild that image and fix it. And this is happening all before deployment. So what about production? So now we're in development mode, and sometimes how do you verify them? How do you actually verify unverified containers, and how would you know that your environment has any bad containers inside? So I'm gonna do another demo. So this is my last demo for today. All right. So I have here some basic YML files. As you can see, I'm also making a mistake. I'm not supposed to put the password in my YML. It should be set as secrets, but I'm gonna deploy them anyway. I will be deploying the image called Postgres. Postgres is a public repository. but it's not verified by our container scanning tool. So Nginx as well, and this is the container that I wrote. I also put my own container inside, right? So let me run this. So I get an error. So I'm trying to push it to my my Kubernetes cluster, right? And it tells me here, error from the server, right? Admission webhook denied the request. So meaning I'm not allowed to run this. I'm not allowed to deploy this because this image that I have, it violates the rules. You cannot apply the dev image, and also the image is unscanned. So I'm not allowed. So it looks at two things, right? I'm not allowed to deploy development environment in my production Kubernetes cluster number one, and I'm not even allowed to deploy. I'm not allowed to deploy unscanned images. So a while ago, right, I showed you the one way of scanning images. Also now, we're showing how do you run an unscanned image in the production environment. So very, very good way of letting the developers know that you cannot run it. And this is not an access control type of thing. It's more of gating. Sometimes because we have to deploy our projects to production right as soon as possible, we forgot to do some basic checks. So what this basically means is do not deploy unless you scan the container for issues, or and that's how it looks like. It also even works even if I'm using an Nginx, a public repository, a public container image, because it will tell me that the Nginx is not scanned, right? So very good learning when you look at what kind of stuff you need to deploy in production and what kind of tools that you have to deploy. I'm going to go back to my presentation, and that's my last demo for today. So this is how the policy works, right? Like I'll give you example here. This is how you create how you set policies when you look at containers. You have a strict policy. Please don't run containers that runs as root. Don't use containers that run on namespace. Don't run privileged containers. And you can even block images from registry. So basically, I do not want my containers to run from public registry. I only want it to run I only want my cluster to run verified registry, and I don't want to run dev containers. So it's a good way of enforcing control on your environments, which is very, if you ask my opinion, again, pre-run time. The good thing about this is you're enforcing discipline and you're not running bad containers in your cluster. Again, at the least, right, you are not introducing vulnerabilities and issues in your system, right? This is how it looks like. So basically, the production cluster, sometimes they allow it. Sometimes when you're on strict, it doesn't run. So if you have a dev cluster, it's okay. You can run anything inside. But once you're in production, you need to make sure that you're controlling the flow of containers inside, and you can look at the activity also inside. So that's how from end to end, right? That's how you actually, if you ask my opinion, you can add and put controls on your container environments. So I have this is a question that we ask people who's supposed to write these policies, and later during the quiz, there will be a quiz later that we will ask that as well. So who's supposed to write them? You got your security teams, they're the one in charge of making sure, that your environment is safe. You got your developers, and you got your policy teams, people who write the policy and people who tell everyone that we should be doing this and we should be doing that. So there's, three ways of, looking at it. I think everybody should be writing policy, so it's a more collaborative environment, but that's just me. What if you want to automate? A while ago, right, I've shown you 4 demos, or four ways of making sure that, four simple ways of applying DevSecOps in your environment. What if we want to monitor this? What if I automate this, right? So let's say from a developer perspective, it's already automated. It's real time. As you're packaging your code, the packaging and building of infra typically happens in your pipeline. So if you're using Jenkins, if you're using Circle CI or those DevOps tools, you can already instruct them to make the checks before they even build it, before they even build the infra. So when the build is rejected, your developers will check, hey, what's going on here, right? So basically, you're already controlling from there. So what about deployment, right? What if you see something that's wrong in deployment, then you start creating tickets and start putting it in the projects. That's how you fix it. And then once you create the tickets, that's when you start rolling back and telling your developers or your team, hey, this is how you pick. And I have some tips for this. Not last two slides. My tips, you start with 1-day projects. So you go in. You try it out in your, you as a developer, you can try it out in your environment, test it with your pipeline, and then, just play around. You don't have to make it super complex and super, you don't have to make it super complex and super difficult. How I build this demo is I build them one by one and tested them one by one. And if you want to experience this, we Trend Micro has hands-on labs on how to do this in real life, and then we have labs that you can play, and then you can do all of these that I just discussed today. Then we, I know you're a very big community and very important community in Indonesia. So we always do a lot of these kind of events for the user groups. So yeah, I think we're going to the Q&A now because I think there's a lot of questions today. Guys, would you like me to go after the questions and answer them here?
Okay. Thank you. So there is some question for you.
Yep.
Okay, the first question comes from Ramadhani. The question is, what are the barriers to DevSecOps adoption? It's a bit general.
Yeah, very good question. One of the barriers is basic. If you ask my opinion, right, the barriers is it's all about the mindset. I think when you look at the teams, right, they're so used. If you work with developers and security teams, they're used to doing the old school way of looking at things and securing environments. The thing with DevOps in general, not just in DevSecOps, is that you have to really you really have to change the way you're deploying things and you're looking at things, because DevSecOps is very there's no formula, and people think that it's super hard to do. People think that it will take a long time to do, and people think that it's going to be very difficult and very time consuming. The reason why I have to show you those simple examples today is my goal is to share with you guys that it's not that hard, and you can start from your UI and your from your environment, so you can start deploying and building this up very quickly. So yeah, if you ask me, that's learning and number two is the fright. People are scared, and it's not that hard. Yeah. So that's my answer to those questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Paul. Okay, so the next question comes from Randy Rinaldi. So what are the important business and technical benefits of using DevOps?
Yep. From a business perspective, right? If you look at DevOps in general, if you're doing DevOps in general, from a business perspective, number one, you can deploy applications faster. The idea of, if you look at hackathons, if you look at startups, right, the key is how can you build applications as fast as you can and how can you deploy them as fast as you can. From a technical perspective, I used to be a monolithic developer where everything is in just one server and then we run it. Now, as I learned DevOps, right, the main importance of DevOps, it goes hand in hands in microservices and how how you change your mind and how to design and implement applications. So we have customers who's fully doing it and they deploy everything quickly and they fix things quickly because everything is decoupled. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Hopefully the questions is answered. So comes the next.
Next question. Okay. There's this question from Andreas, right?
Yeah.
If you want to build some security system using DevSecOps, is there any language you must learn, or is there any tools that we need to learn to build it? Not really. The tools, there's a lot of tools there. My only advice is just try to. My only advice in looking tools is don't look at it because it's cool. Look at it because it's useful and it serves a purpose. Again, the important part, the essence of doing DevSecOps is to make sure that you're able to prevent issues when you go to production. Yeah. Language wise, you really don't have to learn different languages. For me, I implemented this because I know Bash, I know YAML, I know Docker, I know Kubernetes. So I just put all my experience there and build out this demos that I was showing today. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. So the next question is from Novianto Wijaya. Sorry. From Agung Dwi Laksono. So the question is there any roadmap or learning path that we can follow to learn the DevSecOps?
Yeah, good question. I self-studied and I learned this by doing. So the roadmap is my suggestion is start simple, start with basic stuff, like what I just showed you today. Start with basic stuff that you can deploy in your environment. I didn't even demo something around like automation. I didn't even look at CI/CD yet. I just showed something around. Basic stuff, right? How can you control things and how can you fix things on your environment? Because that's how I would start. I would start on my my developer environment before I put it out and make it much more complex.
Okay, thank you. So next question, maybe this will be the last question before we enter the last session of and beginning to enter our quiz. So from Ridi Ferdiana, can we put the smart check system by Trend Micro into our CI/CD cycle?
Yeah, that's correct. You can put it. It's actually designed for CI/CD. Yes. So we have a Jenkins Trend Micro has a Jenkins plugin, and you can deploy it there.
Okay, thank you for the questionnaire. There will be an additional information from Ms. Agita Saraswati. Please, Ms. Agita Saraswati.
Hi everyone. Halo semuanya, terima rekan-rekan semua. So actually, I don't have any information. I just want to say hello. Terima kasih untuk DevOps Indonesia sudah memberikan waktunya dan teman-teman untuk bisa hadir di sini. I think it's great to see that so many questions we have in the chat box. perhaps Paul can answer all of your question here.
I can
Yeah.
answer I can answer in the chat, no problem.
Sure, thank you, Paul. I mean, like, yeah, I would just say that thank you so much for having us, and really great to have a chance to see all of you. Makasih banyak. Dan Trend Micro Indonesia, kami Trend Micro ada di Indonesia. Saya merupakan marketing manager untuk Indonesia. Jadi teman-teman, terima kasih sekali untuk bisa ada di sini begitu. Sebenarnya nggak ada informasi, ini hanya say hello saja untuk bisa berkenalan dengan teman-teman. Jika nanti ada pertanyaan lebih lanjut, mungkin juga ingin ada mengikuti hands-on labs-nya kami ada yang tadi juga disampaikan oleh Paul. Silakan bisa kontak saya, nanti kita bisa invite Anda gitu ya untuk bisa join di dalam challenge tersebut begitu. Itu saja sih Mas yang ingin saya sampaikan, karena sebenarnya saya hanya ingin menyapa rekan-rekan yang sudah hadir di sini. Terima kasih banyak.
Oke, terima kasih Ibu Agita. Mungkin satu pertanyaan lagi. Satu pertanyaan lagi ya, mungkin ya kita tambahkan ya, tadi mungkin ada yang terlewat. Boleh. Ya sebelum kita masuk ke kuis, karena waktunya juga masih agak banyak juga. Oke, tadi dari sebentar, dari Novianto tadi ya. Okay, how do we ensure that the application we make is truly safe from attacks later when applied? So, Mr. Paul?
Are we doing the Kahoot now? Is it the Kahoot, right? Or the Slido?
Sorry?
We will answer one more question, Paul.
One more question.
We're going to answer
one more question.
There's so many questions, so yeah, just pick one more.
Yeah, so there's this question that from Hendy, right? How is this applicable to AWS e-commerce? So you're using AWS while you're building your environment. You can use this to control anything that you deploy. So if you're, for example, you want to look at your CloudFormation templates, and you want to look at the containers you're deploying, you can use this to make sure that, and the goal again, the essence of DevSecOps is to reduce the risk of your production environment, because we deploy code so fast, we deploy applications so fast, we might miss. And I'll give you an example, right? You might deploy an application right now, and you might forget about it because you're in another project. And the important part is, how can you fix those issues as fast as you can when you get an audit, or when you discover that, hey, I actually need to do some fixing here, right? There's another question from Arnanda. It says, what is the difference between DevSecOps and IT security? If there's IT security in the company, do you still need DevSecOps? Absolutely. If you ask my opinion, DevSecOps is it should be a project between developers and IT security. When you when you apply controls before you deploy, you're actually making IT security jobs easier. If you look at security professionals, SOC, CISO people, the SOCs, the security teams, they have so many things to do, and they have so many things to worry about. And sometimes it's a very thankless job. The best way to help them is to make sure that, to help them to make sure that we're not deploying anything that's substandard, or that can cause a lot of issues. If you look at big organizations, right, it's always like this. The story is always like this. Developers are having a hard time deploying because security team says no. Security team is worried because they don't know what the developers are putting. Having DevSecOps, right, or implementing security in your pipeline makes it easier, or actually makes security more of a collaborative effort, rather than it's a security team's problem, right? It's not our problem. We're the developers. It's not our problem anymore, right? Yep. This is I have a question. There's a question from Winto, right? how do we make this a fun process and not make DevOps being an overwhelming burden? Yeah, like I just answered a while ago, right? That's always the concern, right? The developers will always say, security is making it slow. The reason why I showed very simple demos today and very very simple things is doesn't have to be difficult, doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be that hard. You can do it very small and steady, right? Yeah, so those are some of my those are some of my answers to some of the questions, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, we can start our next session. There will be a quiz. So everyone can join the kahoot.it dengan PIN-nya 9702773 ya. I already write it down at the chat box. So before we enter.
Ya, Mas Wisnu, saya bantu ya. Mas Wisnu boleh di-share screen-nya. Teman-teman semua boleh minta tolong silakan disiapkan device-nya untuk join. Mohon untuk menulis nama asli ya, maksudnya bukan pakai alias atau nama samaran, karena nanti kaitannya untuk distribusi hadiahnya. Dan paling tidak menggunakan dua kata. Jadi kalau misalkan namanya saya Mia Fauziah, jangan cuma nama Mia aja, karena takutnya nanti ada dua orang yang namanya sama dengan Mia gitu. Jadi mohon dituliskan untuk sejelas mungkin untuk namanya. Oke, so far semuanya memenuhi ya, ini namanya lengkap semua. Oke. Kita tunggu berapa menit, Mas Wisnu? Sekarang 19.48, kita tuh sampai 19.50 ya?
Ya, 19.50.
Oke, jadi teman-teman semua, nanti pertanyaannya akan muncul di layar Zoom. Kalau misalkan mainnya dari handphone, nanti jawabnya di handphone masing-masing, diklik mana yang betul. Selain harus betul juga harus cepat ya. Jadi sistemnya itu by point. Jadi poin yang paling tinggi yaitu dia yang menjawab benar dan juga cepat. Nah, nanti di akhir itu ada 3 podium, 1, 2, 3. Boleh diinfo Mas Wisnu apa aja hadiahnya? Boleh diulang lagi?
Oke, hadiahnya seperti yang sudah saya sampaikan ya sebelumnya. Jadi nanti ada Fitbit Inspire, pemenang juara pertama, terus ada second winner-nya mendapatkan JBL Go 2, terus untuk pemenang ketiga mendapatkan AKG K52 headphones. Gitu, Mbak Mia.
Oke, sekarang 19.49. Silakan teman-teman yang mau join, kita tungguin ya.
Ya, sudah 30 nih ya.
Sembilan 19.50 kita mulai ya, Mas ya?
Ya.
Kayaknya udah nggak ada lagi sih nih yang join. Boleh di-lock, Mas?
Oke.
31 ya.
31 ya. Oke, kita start ya. Oke, the DevSecOps approach. Pertanyaan pertama, what makes DevSecOps popular? Oke. Ada while coding, during deployment, during production, atau all correct.
Mas, sepertinya salah deh pertanyaannya, mohon maaf.
Ya, sorry.
Iya.
Sebentar.
Iya, mungkin bisa di cek di pertanyaan dari saya.
Oh iya, sebentar. Mungkin nggak apa-apa ya. Itu ini dulu ya. Oke.
Iya.
Ini baru yang kedua ya.
Iya, betul.
What makes DevSecOps popular? Oke. Oke, nggak apa-apa, nanti di pertanyaan nomor 5 saya jadikan itu kok Mbak, double point ya.
Siap.
Oke. Oke, Pak Anwar Yusuf ya, sementara memimpin. Oke, what is the easiest way to secure container environment? Oke, apakah control network access, control plane access, apply IPS and AV2 workloads, ensure container has no vulnerabilities. Oke. Oke, Chris ya, sekarang disalib. Oke, what is the best way of securing cloud environments? Hire auditor, do a pen test from outside, automatically check cloud postures, ask someone to check resource on a weekly basis. Oke, jawabannya jadi yang automatically check cloud posture ya. Oke, sementara masih memimpin, Chris. Oke, ini double point ya. Who should set policies for security controls? Apakah compliance team, security teams, developers? Oke, jadi banyak yang jawab, all of us ya. Oke, selamat ya Pak Chris, Anwar Yusuf. Dan Pak Ramadhani. Oke, nanti bagi para pemenang, tadi bila sudah memasukkan datanya, mungkin nggak apa-apa, nanti bisa di-leave aja. Atau kalau mungkin yang belum memasukkan data untuk nomor teleponnya, nanti mungkin bisa di-provide ke kita. Setelah acara ini selesai, mungkin bisa langsung ke direct message ke saya ya. Oke, sebelumnya saya ucapkan terima kasih banyak kepada Paul Hidalgo dan Mbak Gita Saraswati untuk sharing session-nya di malam ini dari Trend Micro. Oke, kita masuk ke foto session. Kita bareng-bareng. Kita nyalakan video ya untuk kita foto bersama. Oke, sebentar.
Wah, senang sekali nih bisa melihat langsung wajah rekan-rekan semua yang tadi hanya nama.
Tuh, ini ada beberapa yang penanya juga tadi ya, yang sudah menyalakan videonya.
Dan selamat untuk yang pemenang. Tadi sudah sampaikan Mas Wisnu, mohon disampaikan saja detailsnya nanti, distribusinya langsung dari kami, dari saya dan tim akan kontak langsung ya Mas Wisnu ya, kepada teman-teman yang tadi sudah memenangkan kuisnya begitu. Dan juga buat teman-teman yang tadi ada bertanya, seperti Mas Wisnu juga bilang, kami sudah ada giveaway juga OVO atau GoPay gitu senilai 100.000. Nanti dari tim saya juga akan ada kontak rekan-rekan yang tadi sudah bertanya. Terima kasih banyak.
Oke, mungkin bisa dibantu ya Mbak Mia. Halo?
Hai Mas, ya.
Ya, bisa dibantu untuk screenshot-nya ya.
Oke, saya screenshot ya. 1, 2, 3, cheers. Oke, baru satu.
Oke, baru
Satu kali
satu.
lagi.
Yang next ya, kedua.
Mianya juga nggak buka kamera, Mbak.
Oke. Oh iya, kayaknya nggak buka kamera ya.
Ulang,
Iya.
Kalau gitu ulang, kita ulang.
Oke.
Doang ya.
Oke, ulang ya. Yang pertama. 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
Oke. Sudah?
Oke.
Oke, yang kedua sudah ya? Oke, kalau begitu terima kasih atas kehadirannya para peserta malam hari ini di acara meetup kita yang ke-47 ya, dan terima kasih banyak kepada Paul Hidalgo dan Agita, Ibu Agita Saraswati atas waktunya.
Terima kasih.
untuk sharing sessionnya malam ini. Terima kasih banyak. Selamat malam.
Terima kasih. Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Thank you semuanya. Terima kasih banyak.